Hello and welcome to the Tech for Climate podcast. I'm Guillaume, your host, and each week I'm fortunate to share with you stories from climate tech founders, investors, and corporations sharing their unique insights into this fast-moving industry. Eventually, like me, you will learn, discover, and get inspired by those unique men and women who are contributing to the fight against climate change, and I hope it will help you to take a step in this formidable movement. So before we start, I just want to share a few words about us, as this podcast is just the tip of the iceberg of what we do at Startup Basecamp to support the climate tech movement. Our mission is to accelerate capital deployment towards climate tech founders, allowing them to focus on scaling their solutions. How do we do that? Every day, we help founders access to resources and connection and gain the visibility they need to expand their growth. We do this in a number of ways with a membership platform, a Slack group with a growing number of founders, investors, and experts from around the world. And recently, we went one step further with the matching services to connect founders with top climate tech investors. Keep in mind that we are able to do all of this thanks to the support of our listeners and our members. So please like and subscribe, share one episode with a friend, join a community, and if you haven't already done so, make a small donation to support our work. It really means the world to us. And now, enjoy the show! Hi everyone, in this new episode of our Founder Series, I have the pleasure of speaking with Edward Shenderovich, co-founder and CEO of Synonym Bio. Trailblazer startup reshaping how we approach biomanufacturing with their fermentation farms, creating ecosystems where synthetic bio can flourish. Edward has charted a fascinating path through the realms of mathematics and philosophy, eventually steering his way into entrepreneurship and bio. His unique journey is marked by a blend of rigorous analytical skills and a deep philosophical understanding of technology's role in society. In our conversation, Edward unpacks the story behind Synonym Bio, groundbreaking digital tools, capacitor and scaler, and the transformative impact on the biomanufacturing industry. We focus into the challenges of navigating complex biological processes, strategic thinking driving the company's growth, and how Synonym Bio aims to streamline the biotech production pipeline. Let's look into the next phase of innovation, sustainability, and the vision to build a more resilient future. The second part of the show, Edward will cover on how building a genuine relationship with investors is equally important as having a strategic financial approach. Investors prioritize sincerity over hard sell, their experience in discerning authenticity. Regarding work-life balance, Edward emphasized the importance of a good sleep. Edward, welcome to the show. Hi, Edward. Welcome to the Tech for Climate podcast. I'm super happy to have you here with us today. I believe it's going to be a great opportunity to hear your story and learn more about your exciting adventure with Synonym Bio, which is on the mission to accelerate the world's biological future by developing, financing, and building commercial scale biomanufacturing facilities. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Guillaume. I'm excited to be here.
So that's a tradition on our show. We like to get a 30-second introduction about your company. So if you can do that for Synonym Bio.
So the idea behind Synonym is that the world needs a biomanufacturing cloud. Just like the digital cloud was instrumental for many companies like Uber or Spotify or Netflix to build these incredible businesses. In the same way, I think the biomanufacturing cloud is now what's missing to accelerate our transformation to or transition to better materials, biologically produced materials. So we need to make more capacity, but we also need to make biomanufacturing capacity more accessible and more usable with less friction and just better experience for both companies that are trying to produce products, and companies that are providing that capacity.
Let's start from the top. On our show, we love to understand at first who is the human behind the guest speaker. So if you could maybe share with our audience a little bit about your personal story and background. I mean, what are you passionate about? What do you love to do besides building Synonym? I mean, what makes you feel inspired or like your best self? As I always ask, who is Edward?
So as a kid, I was growing up in the Soviet Union, and I um, I I liked solving problems, and I realized, and I later read about this, that there are people who actually get a dopamine rush from. I think most people get a dopamine rush from solving problems, and some people get a bigger rush. So I've been I was because math is something where you constantly solve problems. I was excelling in math and was doing quite well both in the Soviet Union. And then my parents left as refugees in 1990 before the Soviet Union collapsed. Ended up in California, and I continued loving math. And then when I went to college, I discovered philosophy. And I realized that the problems that philosophy is dealing with are even more complicated than the problems of math. And I've been tinkering with some philosophical problems ever since. And because philosophy is the foundation of all science, that has opened a lot of doors for me. And I've been fascinated. I mean, I've been equally fascinated with literature. And have written and published some things. I at the same time I've been fascinated with the idea of entrepreneurship and building companies. And ultimately, I don't see how I can separate the two, language and communications and building companies.
No. If you look back a little bit about your previous, I would say, work-life balance and experience prior the launch of Synonym, I mean, if you step back and you reflect on it, what did you learn on that journey in itself that in a way gave you an edge to start the company? Maybe you have one or two pieces of experiences that you like reflect on, and that has been like a key pieces that give you this edge today.
You know, I think it's been the whole story. When I started Synonym together with my co-founder Joshua, I thought that I was actually uniquely qualified to build a company like that. I started my professional career working for Silicon Valley Bank. I was Silicon Valley Bank's first internet analyst 25 years ago. I then left, built several software companies. One of them worked very closely with Amazon as Amazon was launching Amazon Web Services, and we built the back end of their marketplace. I then built an online media company. I then started an investment business called Kite Ventures, and ended up investing hundreds of millions in both European and US tech. Was very lucky to be one of the cornerstone investors of Delivery Hero, and saw it go from PowerPoint to IPO. We then partnered with the founders of Plated, and I became one of the cornerstone investors there. And that company was acquired by Albertsons. And I learned a lot about about food tech and about our food supply chains, which really, when you start thinking about how food is produced, sometimes you're appalled, especially with animal agriculture, the way with industrialized farming. And that was one of the key drivers for me to start looking into synthetic biology. But all these varied experiences, including some other, we built built a company called Notel, which was one of the largest flex office businesses. now owned by Newmark, which is a public real estate company. I had a variety of experiences, and I guess they are my background is maybe as varied and as complicated as biology itself. And reflecting on this, I never really studied biology. I didn't study biology on the college level, but I think we're all students of biology. Biology is the science of life. And as we live life, we study biology, and we live in it. And I think that we need varied experiences to be able to tackle complex things and complex tasks. So what we're working on at Synonym is not easy. It's a hard problem. It's not just a problem of biology. It's a problem of infrastructure and unlocking capital that's needed to build this completely new type of infrastructure.
So before we start, maybe and sorry to interrupt you, but before we start to go into the detail of Synonym, maybe I would like to take a zoom out, if you allow me, and try to understand this overall context that Synonym is surfing on. So maybe as we discussed prior to the show, covering together this so-called super material and biotech production facilities market. I mean, the current challenges and opportunities which they represent in the fight against climate change. Maybe to put things, back into perspective, could you eventually start by giving the audience like your general overview of few different examples of this so-called biotech super materials type? I mean, what are we talking about here? In which sector of the economy do you see is the most important right now? I mean, for which need and application? Maybe if we can refresh the audience to understand this overall need behind those new type of material and Syn Bio in general.
So as I was coming out of the pandemic, I started thinking about an area where I want to spend the next 10, 20 years of my life. And I found synthetic biology to be incredibly deep, incredibly interesting, as we said, complex, and with phenomenal promise. And I started speaking with people in the space, with CEOs of companies. I invested in several businesses that were tackling complex problems in food and in biological production. And I overwhelmingly heard this need for capacity. Every CEO I talked to said that they're lacking capacity. And there were several reports saying that there's a fermentation capacity gap, that we will need considerably more facilities, considerably more bioreactor capacity than exists right now. And I thought, wow, there's an opportunity to build a cloud-like business here, because we also don't want these facilities to be silos. They need to be integrated into a network so that companies can bring production level thinking into their design process, and then we can be their Sherpa as they go from lab scale to pilot scale to other scales. So we started thinking about this broader materials transition that is happening in food, in health and beauty. We will need to replace plastics with bioplastics. We're adding biologics to our agricultural production. We're making maybe even concrete with bioproducts, or replacing concrete with bio-based alternatives. What we realized in researching the market and really preparing, doing some feasibility studies, is that we don't just want products that are replacements for existing products. We always want superior products. And it's like when you're looking for a synonym, you're not looking just to replace a word. You're looking for something superior, a better fit. And that's hence the name. But we have such a variety of life on Earth, and we get constantly inspired by what nature has produced over millions of years of evolution. One of the products that's absolutely phenomenal is spider silk. We know that spider silk is super strong, but we can't harness it from spiders. It's just unreasonable. But we have found a biological solution to produce spider silk protein through precision fermentation, and there are several companies that are doing this now. In the same way that we were harnessing insulin from animals for over 60 years until 1983, until Genentech came up with a way to use recombinant DNA and make precision fermented insulin. We were extracting insulin from animal pancreases, grinding them up and extracting it, and it was a good solution, but it had impurities. It wasn't perfect, and then we were able to synthesize human insulin. In the same way, we'll be able to synthesize many other products, for example, collagen or keratin, which are now primarily animal derived, and these products will be super pure. We'll be able to make egg proteins without the chickens or hens. We can make lactoferrin, which is one of the milk proteins primarily found in breast milk, which has amazing brain development and potentially anti-aging qualities. We're constantly finding new applications for new products that can be produced with precision fermentation, using microorganisms to make stuff, and that requires a lot of infrastructure, and that's what drives us. It requires different approaches, not only on the lab or pilot scale, but it also requires us to think about taking these products to commercial scale and produce profitably in large volumes, in the volumes that the market demands.
So before we look at the productive assets in itself, you mentioned all of those like different examples today, and it's true when you're not an expert in bio, a lot of them could be look like a sci-fi concept still, and I'm sure some are. Which area do you see that there's the most needs right now, and where the application are getting mature already on the market and needs to be pushed and grow? Do you see any of those new application, new super materials or bioproduct that are already reaching larger scale and out of those labs as a more like sci-fi concept?
They're not really sci-fi concepts. There are products that are already on the market. Perfect Day has their beta-lactoglobulin on the market, and you can go to many stores around the US and buy milk which is made with that beta-lactoglobulin. It's not plant-based milk. It's the same milk, uses the same proteins, just these proteins are made without cows. Now, there's a company called Bored Cow, which is, I think, making strides in getting these products into consumers' hands. You can find many other products, like there's precision fermented collagen made by Modern Meadow or Geltor or other companies, which which is found in cosmetics, and it's functionally superior product. I mentioned spider silk protein. The company that's making it, one of the companies that makes it, is called Spiber, and they've partnered with a number of fashion brands to weave in spider protein into the fabric. So this is not science fiction. It's very much reality. And then these are products that are touched by consumers. There are also many B2B applications. There's a company called Pivot Bio, which is making a biological solution to induce nitrogen fixation and reduce the amount of fertilizer that you would need for corn and other crops, which is great. We don't need to push nitrogen, as much nitrogen to the soil as we're doing now. We actually need to reduce the amount of fertilizer that we use, because it's also not, I mean, it's not a great, not great for climate. I think that in general, biology and biological solutions are inherently tied to our need for addressing climate change. Climate is an ecological problem and biological, because that's where we live. I mean, we're examples of this life, living in this complex ecology of Earth, and we need to find biological solutions because they're more sustainable, but also because they're actually better in many ways, and they're better organoleptically, and probably better, superior from the cost perspective. They need to be superior from the cost perspective, and we need to find ways to view environmental protection as a profit center.
Do you have any like projection in terms of like how this SynBio and I saw on your website the previous revolution was on the chemical revolution, if I agree, if you agree, and now we are on the biological revolution. So do you have any like projection data point here in terms of like growth for these all sectors in itself in the coming decade?
Yeah, I think the boldest projections came from Schmidt Futures. They published a report, which was then republished, or the numbers were used by the U.S. government and many others. They believe that the bioeconomy, our biological solutions, can have a $30 trillion impact on the GDP by 2050. Considering GDP growth, this is similar to the impact of the internet now, and that's really exciting. And I think we are like from the development of these solutions, we are maybe 25 years behind the internet. And if you project it back, well, the internet was a product of some of the work in the 60s, and real synthetic biology really started in the 80s. So it makes sense. Biology is 20 years behind, but considerably more exciting.
So now that we understand a bit better the magnitude of the opportunity, maybe let's double click on the productive assets necessary to support this growing market. So maybe if you can reframe for the audience, like the type of infrastructure. I mean, we heard bioreactor, but what does it mean in itself? I mean, what do we need in terms of infrastructure today to enhance the production of those biotech and super materials in itself? Can you help us to understand that a little bit better?
So if you take the broader space of materials transition, every company that touches the real world will need to go through it in some way. We will need to replace our currently fossil fuel-based or animal agriculture-based materials with differently produced products, which will be superior in many different ways. So that's the basis of the materials transition. Just like the companies, many businesses went through digital transformation over the last 20 years. Over the next 20 years, companies will go through materials transition. And that will touch everything that you see around you. The paint on the walls, the dyes in your clothing, the cream that you put in your face, the food that you eat, it will be affected. Even wires of your computer that you use for plugging your computer into the socket. So there are different pathways that materials can be produced, and we believe that one of the key pathways is biological. That biology offers a very wide range of options, and within the biological processes, the lowest hanging fruit is fermentation. Fermentation has been around for thousands of years. We all drink wine and beer and kombucha. We eat kimchi and pickles. All those are products of fermentation. We take the same organisms, same yeast or bacteria or fungi, and in some cases domesticate them. In some cases modify, take them through a process of guided evolution to actually secrete or produce intracellularly the product that we actually need. And some products are easier to produce. Some products are more difficult. Some are, like insulin is actually a complicated product to make. But this the process of fermentation, specifically precision fermentation, holds tremendous promise. And what is it? Basically, it's taking these microorganisms and putting them into an environment where they can consume feedstock. In many cases, that feedstock is sugar, dextrose, and they secrete the proteins or enzymes or other products that we may need. So that happens in a bioreactor. And precision fermentation happens in what is called an aerobic aseptic bioreactor, meaning that it has no air that comes into it. So generally you can the process of fermentation is a couple days, maybe up to 7 days, and as a result you get a broth with that you feed in sugar and water, and you have this broth that then you need to take through what is called downstream processing. Generally, that involves that broth going through a centrifuge where you discharge water. It goes through different forms of filtration, microfiltration, ultrafiltration, and then there could be other downstream processing steps. So at the end, you get the product that you need, which could be in liquid form or can go through a spray dryer or freeze dryer and could be shipped as powder. So that's the whole process. Bioreactors are only part of this process, a very important one, but only part of it. The downstream processing equipment is also very important, but also only part of this process. There's also the overall infrastructure. This process requires electricity, water. You need to have the ability to discharge the remaining broth or discharge wastewater. You need to have wastewater cleaning or wastewater treatment. And ultimately, it's not just the bioreactor that makes a facility. It's the whole set of integrated equipment and piping and utilities that are responsible for delivering that product. And what we've realized with as we were planning Synonym and as we're doing our engineering work is that a lot of that can be standardized, and certainly on the upstream fermentation. You can standardize it across hundreds of products and hundreds of applications, and then downstream is often different and possibly can be financed separately. So we and what's really missing in the market now is that standardization. So that's that's something that's driving us. So if we're building a biomanufacturing cloud, we need to make sure that the parts of that cloud can work together. So you can have efficient and seamless tech transfer from one scale to another scale as you move from one facility to another.
So now that we understand a bit better, like the overall value chain there, and again, we're just for the duration of this show, we will not be able to do a white paper on it. So, but I'd like to understand a little bit more. Like, if you can, share with us, like you're mentioning, like which is important is those building blocks, making sure that there's like standardization. So, if you look back at the current market of all of those engineering piece of equipment that you need, I mean, who are the main actors who are currently building, financing those productive assets in itself? I mean, how is the market organized today? What's the current capacities? And I saw that in my research before the show that we're way behind in terms of what we have today and what we need actually today and what we will need in a very upcoming future. So if you can just like help us to grasp and understand that part before going to full steam into Synonym after that.
So you're actually approaching this in a very similar way to the way we approach building the company. We first needed to understand how the market is organized. And when we started looking for existing facilities online, it was very, very difficult to find. So the first thing that we decided to do was to build a directory of biomanufacturing capacity, first for our internal use, and then we thought that we can actually publicize that and make it an important utility for the market. So for months, we worked on gathering data, on talking to specialists in the space, collecting disparate information on facilities. And then in November of 22, we launched this product called Capacitor. It's at capacitor.bio. And we launched it with about 100 facilities of different sizes that we were able to find. And as Capacitor started growing, we were able to grow the database to about 250 facilities, close to 50 million liters of capacity that we've discovered around the world, and there are thousands of companies that are now using the platform and have benefited from having access to an open directory. So that was the first thing that we decided to do, and that gave us insights into how the market was organized. What we realized is that capacity on larger scale is missing. It's just not there. It's not available. So if you're trying to make food grade, proteins, whether they could be milk proteins or even or egg or different other things, you don't have many options. There aren't many 100,000 plus liter bioreactors that would allow you to produce profitably at scale. So we certainly see an opportunity there. But there's also not enough demo scale capacity. There are not enough reactors of 25, 30,000 liters or 15,000 liters that you need to then migrate to those larger scales, or that can be used for production of other products that don't need as much capacity. So, for example, pharma doesn't need large-scale biomanufacturing capacity, large-scale fermentation bioreactors. Things that are closer to pharma, like health and beauty, also don't need that much. Don't need the reactors that are that large. So there are problems in capacity. There are problems at every step of the market, and what we realize is that there's huge intransparency and friction to getting that capacity secured. It's and that friction comes just historically, because pharma has been pharma is a complicated market, highly regulated, and you don't want to make mistakes. And even though you're not dealing with pharma products, the market is suffering from this karma of pharma, where it's just slow, and sometimes it takes 2 years for you from the time you start looking for capacity to the time you actually get a product from the partner with which you've contracted. And many of those relationships go sour. So these cycles are very, very long. And what we want to do is shorten them, and create a platform that would be a reliable partner for SynBio companies and for those who need synthetic biology products, and for providers of capacity. And ultimately, we will need to build a lot more capacity to address the needs of our materials transition.
But is that the market in terms of like production capacities? Is that like a very fragmented market? I mean, you mentioned again that there's no standardization. So, but do you see any emerging like or already existing larger player building those capacities in terms of the different engineering pieces that you need for the upstream, the bioreactor, and the downstream, or is it completely fragmented and very small actors everywhere?
So one of the largest providers of equipment for biomanufacturing is a company called Tetra Pak. They're a large European company which started as a provider of lines for the milk industry, like for packaging dairy. And then they've expanded. It's a huge conglomerate. They're working very closely with a company called Alfa Laval, which makes equipment. There are lots of equipment makers out there, and there's a number of facilities. There are companies that are building their own facilities. A company like Novozymes or Novo Nordisk, which makes insulin and has made Ozempic and has become the largest European company as a result. They're all using that equipment, and they're all building their own capacity. There are companies that provide that are contract manufacturers, companies like Olon or Evonik, which are also building their own facilities. And unfortunately, that's not enough. We're all seeing this fermentation capacity gap. So there are some startups that are building better bioreactors. There's a company in Boston called Arc Biotech, which is making a bioreactor specific for cultivated meat. There are companies that are building better reactors or better technologies for fermentation. Fermentation generally requires the microorganisms to be agitated so that they actually consume more of the sugar that you feed to them. And maybe you can do that agitation not mechanically, but in some other ways. Maybe you can push sound towards the bioreactors, or have bioreactors that are driven by sound or light. which would actually reduce electricity costs related to and electricity usage related to the process, because you won't need to have mechanical agitation and a rotor that actually inside the bioreactor. So there's a lot of innovation that's happening in the space. Ultimately, that all needs to come together into a well-engineered, well-structured, and well-built facility. And there are these companies called EPCs, engineering, procurement, and construction businesses, which are generally hired when you need to build these facilities. Large engineering firms, which make sure that the bioprocess is correct and the building is sound and has a sound foundation, it doesn't fall, the roof doesn't leak. Engineers do a lot of very important stuff. We often talk a lot about software engineers, but the engineers that are building our world are doing phenomenally important work. We need to make sure that planes don't fly, don't fall,
Don't fall,
and that the doors don't fall off while they're flying.
So and I think that's definitely a nice challenge for the Airbus company or Boeing, sorry. But just good question before
Airbus seems to be doing fine.
Yeah, they're doing fine. So you see, it's getting like the time to close this section before going a little bit more in details about what you guys do. Maybe if you can give to the audience a little bit like this regulatory framework in place today, helping this growth of the market. I mean, do you see like any regulation in place or upcoming ones that are really kind of like could be considered as tailwind for this market, or do you see some there's still some lack of regulation to really accelerate this transition? Maybe if you can share that with the audience today.
So when we started the company, there was no regulation in the US, or no regulation that at least we knew of. Within a few months, in September of 22, the Biden administration released an executive order supporting the bioeconomy and biomanufacturing, and some of the money was allocated through different agencies. Most of it was actually allocated through the Department of Defense, and then the Department of Defense in 23 started a separate initiative called U.S. Biomanufacturing, focusing on national security priorities. So there have been billions allocated from the federal government. There has been some money allocated from the government from the European Union, and other governments in the world have made strides as well. So Singapore is doing something. Qatar is doing something. Saudi Arabia just last week announced this major initiative on the bioeconomy to support biomanufacturing. They want to position themselves as one of the leading biotech and biomanufacturing countries in the world. So the governments are waking up, and the U.S. federal government understands that biotechnology and biomanufacturing is not just a matter of sustainable economic growth. It's a matter of national security, because you need to have food security. You need to have secure access to materials, and the U.S. doesn't want to depend on China. I'm sure European Union doesn't want to depend on China, and China is actually going strong with their biomanufacturing initiatives. They included biomanufacturing in their 5-year plan a couple of years ago. They're building capacity. We know that it's cheaper to build in China, probably cheaper to operate. There are other opportunities in Asia, like Southeast Asia, whether it's Vietnam or Philippines or Malaysia, are also exploring their own biomanufacturing industries. And I think that over the next several years, we will see more and more capital allocated by the US federal government and by the European Union and others to really push the industry forward. Plus, this is I think that the bioeconomy and biomanufacturing are also inherently tied with our other climate-related infrastructure. So under the U.S. infrastructure bills and in the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a lot of capital that's going into clean energy. That clean energy will be used in biomanufacturing as well. And that will significantly reduce the carbon footprint of the products that we use, reduce our Scope 3 emissions, and provide sustainable options to many animal agriculture products and plastics. So the government is there. I think the government can always do more, and we feel that there's you need to. I think the industry is nascent in terms of working with the government, and the government's efforts are nascent. So there's a lot that needs to be done, and there's a lot of almost every company needs to lean in to educate their congressmen, to educate the senators and the executive offices on what the bioeconomy means and why it's important. And this needs to be happening in every country. There's a there's a lot that we haven't talked about in terms of the materials transition or in terms of the bioeconomy and biomanufacturing on this podcast. And not everybody in the world listens to this podcast. Has a wide audience, but it's still very small compared to the level of education that we need to educate the consumers on bioproducts, and the consumers in turn need to be requesting these bioproducts from. They need to be doing the lobbying. They need to be vocal about subsidies that should be coming from the government. It's not just the industry itself.
Yeah, it takes time. Huh? This all of those transition is definitely not easy, and especially sometimes on the the food subcategory of the synthetic biology. There's always this risk of Frankensteinization of the food system, which always give some step back on the politics side. But let's go and thanks so much for covering extensively this whole initial part. I'd like to dig a little bit more into Synonym Bio in itself. Can you eventually you uncover the initial story of it, how you guys came across those different needs from the smaller companies in terms of capacities needed. So can you tell us a bit more about the product side as of today, the service that you guys are providing? If you could eventually walk us through the process for who is it applicable today, which subcategory within the whole, I would say, bio industry you guys are serving today, which type of client? Maybe help us to understand that a bit better and this try to get your own secret sauce there.
Yeah. So we started the company about 2 years ago, and we've done a lot behind the scenes, and we've publicly launched 2 digital products. One I mentioned, which is a capacitor used by thousands of companies to find and secure biomanufacturing capacity at different scales, both starting at lab scale, then going to pilot and demo, and ultimately commercial production. The other product we launched is called Scalar. It's at scalar.bio. And Scalar is a super interesting product. We came to Scalar through our work with customers in the market, with synthetic biology companies or bioproduct producers that needed to understand what it would take them to be profitable. Like you're coming out of labs and you've designed certain microorganisms that are making proteins, and then you want to produce thousands of tons of that product. So at what level do you get profitable, and how much capital do you actually need to build those facilities and get to profitability? That is called techno-economic analysis. And we started, we've talked to hundreds of companies, and we went on deep dives with dozens of them, working on techno-economic analysis manually. And then what we realized is that we can automate that. And we created a platform that I mentioned, Scalar, launched it in the middle of last year. And hundreds of companies started using it and have ran techno-economic analysis on thousands of products. And this gave us a really interesting lens on the market. Like in aggregate, we're seeing what companies are looking for, what the economics are, what provides better returns. And we've published a lot of that data. So we've started publishing these industry trends. We published one on capacity, on fermentation capacity. In the beginning of last year, we published one on the broader fermentation market using capacitor and scalar data. And we're releasing that information publicly because I think it's important to provide that type of public service. So we've been able to see, we've been able to help a number of companies understand the economics of their production, but we're also able to see in aggregate what the trends are. And I think it's not maybe it's obvious, but when you're trying to make something that has needs large volumes and has thin margins, those products are may not be the lowest hanging fruit. So and that's the key characteristic of the food market. We have the market like pharma, out of which the ideas of precision fermentation, biomanufacturing came, with small quantities of product being produced with large margins. And then on the other hand, you look at food, which requires huge quantities, huge infrastructure, and generally has low margins. And then there's a whole market in between. So I think that in between is the most interesting part for now. We will build infrastructure for food. There is infrastructure for pharma, but there are pockets of demand in between. And I think one of the more interesting markets is health and beauty and cosmetics, because it does have it requires smaller volumes of product, and at the same time it can have bigger margins than food. Another interesting market is biologics for agriculture, which I sort of refer to as agropharma. It's pharma-like products, additives to make crops function, crops better. To make like if you are in animal agriculture, and we still need some animal agriculture to feed the world. We need to make sure that the animals are healthier, and we can't feed them with antibiotics and steroids. We need to find biological solutions that can be used in aquaculture. So there are very, very interesting pockets of demand across these in-between markets. And I think from the capacity utilization perspective, we will not just jump from pharma to commodities. There will be a step change. So we will go from pharma to something that looks like pharma, but is not pharma, and then to something that's used wider, looks a lot even less than farm, even less than farm, and less than farm, and then we'll come to commodities. At the same time, if we're looking at the like broader bioindustrials, there are companies that are making bioplastics, and those are commodity products. They're super cheap, and there are pathways to making them profitably. And in many cases, profitability of these processes is a question of demand. Like, is there enough demand for these products to be produced at the scale at which they're profitable? And that requires education, that ultimately requires time, and that requires better science, requires maybe better microorganisms, could require better bioreactors so that you actually, with less capital, you can produce more. So there's no silver bullet in this. Biology is complicated, and it requires integrated solutions that may not be easy. And and at Synonym we understand that we need to do the hard work, and someone needs to do the hard work.
Yeah, and I understand. I think, I mean, your own journey for building the company is very interesting. Of like, first of all, understanding how is that market starting to share those data, creating those two digital, I would say, funnel for your future client. I believe, you know, when you have like capacitor and scaler, the two names of the product are serving different type of potential clients, learning like what are their needs. So besides those two products, are you guys today already, you know, building facilities for your different clients? Are you financing those facilities? I mean, what are the rest of the that is in the pipeline with Synonym?
Yeah, so one of the driving ideas behind Synonym was that biomanufacturing capacity will be a new asset class for infrastructure investors. In the same way that data centers became a new asset class, or solar farms, there will be so much demand for biomanufacturing capacity that it will be impossible to build all of those facilities on balance sheets of companies that need that capacity. And there will be, just like with more mature asset classes, there will be a separation between the owners of those facilities and the occupiers. So in many cases, with data centers can be owned by the specialized data center companies like REITs, like Equinix or Digital Realty Trust, and then they're occupied by companies like Netflix or Amazon or Facebook. Similarly, with warehouse logistics, there's a company called Prologis, which owns a lot of warehouse logistics, but they're occupied by other companies. And we know that very well from office. Generally, companies don't build their own buildings or don't own their own buildings. They lease that office space. That's an easy example. So we believe that with biomanufacturing, specifically the fermentation capacity, this will also be the case, and that fermentation capacity can be standardized, and it needs to be standardized, and that's why I talked about all of the utilities and all the upstream fermentation that can be made standard for a variety of applications, and then that becomes an emerging asset class. And then the different downstream processing equipment, which may be case specific, can be financed separately. And you can put it on skids and take it in and out, move it around the facility. So this is what our engineering team has been doing for the last 2 years. We've done a lot of engineering work on facilities of different scales, and we are gearing up to break ground on our first project this year. Development takes time. Even software development sometimes takes time, but when you touch the real world, you are dealing with real engineering work, and with permits, and with land, and with moving atoms instead of moving bits.
So can you tell us a bit more about like this, maybe your current business model, and what's your pathways to scale? I mean, as you mentioned, we're in the physical world, moving atoms and not bits. So tell us a bit more about like that part of Synonym.
So ultimately, our business is about providing capacity to those who need it, and we want that capacity to be standardized. We want the tech transfer to be seamless, and that's why, as I mentioned in the beginning of the conversation, we're building this. The idea behind Synonym is this biomanufacturing cloud, or cloud-like business, where you touch that cloud, and then you can you don't need to worry about capacity ever again. 25 years ago, if you needed to have a data center, you would if you had to launch a website, you'd need to buy servers. You would go to a data center. You would rent a cage, put your servers into that cage. You would need to monitor them. It was very complicated. And then Amazon launched Amazon Web Services and was one of the first cloud products. And that completely changed the way the industry works. So we want to change the way this industry works. We want to make it less complicated, with less friction, with fewer problems on tech transfer, ultimately with higher customer satisfaction and shorter cycles from lab to shelf. So we're working on building capacity. We're also working on unlocking capacity that's out there, and matching customers that are working with us with contract manufacturers that can deliver the products that they want, or deliver the services that they need. At the same time, we're leveraging Scalar and leveraging our work on techno-economic analysis to bring production thinking into the design process. So we want to engage with customers, with companies early, and help them think about the production process and production economics as they're designing their microorganisms, to show them that it's actually it should be economical for you to bring these products to market. You can't just design in a vacuum. An architect needs to think about how that building will be built. You can't design something. It makes no sense to design something or to architect something that will not be built, or that will not be economical in building. So by the same token, we need to make sure that the designs of microorganisms that are coming out of labs are economical. And that's the core value that Scalar brings to the market. And that's the core value of the whole integrated platform that we're building. We're engaging with customers early. We're thinking about their economics, and ultimately we're reducing cycles from lab to pilot, from pilot to demo, from demo to commercial scale, and then matching them with existing capacity, and then helping them get into dedicated capacity that will be financed off balance sheet, because it will all be standardized.
Mm. Okay, so maybe last question, because I see that the time is running. But tell us a little bit more about, like, I mean, how are you planning to scale your operation? I mean, what are the steps to achieve it? What needs to happen? What's next for Synonym Bio?
Yeah, so I think that my proudest achievement with Synonym so far is pulling together a phenomenal team of people who are talented and are superstars in their own right, and creating a culture of transparency and efficient communication that allows us to work on complicated problems. There's a team of engineers with decades of bioprocessing experience. There's a team of capital markets experts which have done billions in infrastructure financing. There are excellent product and market development people with experience in SynBio specifically, and everyone's very passionate about making this market work. So I feel like we have a phenomenal team that can execute on any challenge, and we're not afraid of these challenges. It's very important for a company to show that it can work with customers, that there's customer demand, that there's a product market fit. We found product market fit with capacitor. It's being used by thousands of companies. Found product market fit with scaler. It's also being used by hundreds of companies. And we're now with working on our first development project. We'll start demonstrating how all of this comes together into an integrated platform. So I think that's our core challenge and core task for 2024, is to show the market what we're actually doing. I think we've built a very good name for ourselves over the last 2 years with the products that we've launched. I think many people have questioned what our business actually is, and it's and I think 2024 will be the year when we will be more open and more direct about it.
So what's your personal opinion about the climate crisis? It's a question that I ask to every guest on my show. What would you say to the people who feel like demoralized, afraid, scared of all the already visible consequences of climate change? Are we doomed?
Well, we need to do something about it. I think everyone needs to do something about it. There's no point of being afraid. I don't think it's fear that drives action. It's anger. And you need to channel that fear into anger and into action. Ultimately, thinking about the problem is important, but let's not overthink it. Let's just act. You've read Hamlet, right? Hamlet is throughout the whole play, Hamlet, who thinks, a man of thought, is juxtaposed with Fortinbras, the Prince of Norway, who's a man of action. And the play starts with some news about Fortinbras going to war, and ultimately it ends with Hamlet dying and Fortinbras taking over the kingdom of Denmark. Let's be more like Fortinbras and act.
How can the listener of the show today, investors, founders, experts listening to this episode, can help you?
They can demand more bioproducts. I think ultimately we want consumers to learn more about bioproducts and demand them from everyone, from in their food, in the materials that they touch, in their clothing. They are better they're just better. They're better from the sustainability perspective, and they're also they should be organoleptically better. And as I mentioned, environmental protection should be profit center. So these products need to be integrated into supply chains. That requires a lot of education, and some of that education should come from consumers. Ultimately, companies need to be educated by the consumers of their products. They're listening, and they will listen to demands. If consumers are saying that they want sustainable products, but then they're voting for something different with their wallets, the market will listen to that. But I think it's important to vote for byproducts, not only in opinion polls online, but also in stores when you're actually shopping.
Thank you so much, Edward, for your time, your incredible insights, all the hard work again that you put into motion to make this world becoming a better place. So thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thanks, Guillaume. Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us on the Tech for Climate podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. Stay tuned next week for more climate tech insights. In the meantime, head on over to our webpage at startupbasecamp.org, where we have lots more insights and resources for anyone wanting to get involved in climate tech. If you find our resources useful, please consider donating to support our small self-funded team. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. And see you next time.